Hi there. So just continuing on with the last video, which took us up to day 6, and talking about some of the strategies that I use to cope, specifically trying to focus on the psychology behind success in ultra endurance. I just want to sort of go through the breakdown of the final day of the challenge to try and give you an insight into some of the things that I use, because as you'd probably gather, that was the most testing time out of the whole 7 days. And then what I did after, or what I didn't do after, which has made things a whole lot more difficult. So the last video took us up to a really tough time at the end of the 6th Ironman, where I was so fatigued. I had very little recollection of what happened that night. And we then, after that 6th Ironman, we then proceeded on to the final Ironman, which was in Nottingham, which was about 150 miles away. So we travelled down overnight, arriving sometime around 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, something like that, and proceeded to just lie down on a couch in a caravan to try and get a little bit of sleep. Now, the other 2,500 athletes that were there had tapered for a week with good rest. Had probably had more sleep over the last couple of days to make sure that they had enough sleep before this big race, knowing they probably wouldn't sleep very well that night. So they probably had a good 6, 7, 8 hours sleep over the preceding days. I was awake by 4:30 that morning with the noise outside. I could hear people. I didn't sleep very well. People tiptoeing around. Most Ironmans get up that early to have their first breakfast and go and do their ablutions and get themselves ready. So I was up, I was delirious, I was absolutely knackered. Going to the last Ironman, I remember standing there on the morning, people physically dressing me, people putting the tattoos on me, and I'm just stood there trying to eat energy bars. Felt punch drunk, absolutely felt drunk. I could feel my speech was slurring. There's all these people going past me looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited, and I was thinking, what the hell am I doing? Absolutely exhausted after possibly 2-3 hours sleep, which is ridiculous for any single Ironman, never mind doing 7 of them with so little sleep. So we got down to the actual race, and I knew the swim would be relatively easy. Cold water wakes you up a little bit, but I was really fatigued. My arms felt like lead. It was just the thought that this was it. It was over. It was over and done with today. That was getting me through. I didn't have any stress or worry. I didn't have a time in mind. It was just finish it. The sun will go down. I've got 17 hours to finish this. It's known to be a relatively easy course in terms of the terrain. So I was just ready to enjoy it. And I kind of did enjoy the swim. Got about 1.5k into the swim and then stood up. It's a very shallow lake, and just decided to have a little look around and see all these thousands of people sort of swimming around me. Got to the end of the swim, went and had a sit down in the change tent. And my friends were saying on the tannoy that the guy in the tannoy was saying, where is he? Because I'd been shouted out, and people were told to keep an eye on me. 17 minutes it took me in the first transition. I just sat there half asleep, just drying myself properly, get ready for my bike. Then went out and just ambled out onto the bike and just tooled around for the first 90k. Really enjoyed it. One of the main issues we had, though, was we were told by the race organisers that I wasn't allowed to take in my own nutrition. So up until this day, I'd had a protein plan. I'd been using amino acids to make sure that my breakdown was minimal and that I was recovering quick. I had whole foods up until this point. Then all of a sudden, got the lot. I had to use proper race nutrition, and my body just didn't like it. It wasn't processing it. I was getting gastrointestinal issues. I could feel myself just fatiguing, as you probably would. We in our sport, we try and test everything in the weeks and months beforehand to make sure that we have none of these issues. And I found out it was pretty last minute, and possibly my own fault. I hadn't checked an email, and I was told that I couldn't use I couldn't use my own nutrition. Had to use theirs, and the reason being is that any of the marshals on the course that didn't know who I was could disqualify me for taking what's called outside assistance. So I adhered to that, and what happened is I broke down very quickly. By 90k on the bike, I was just done. The sun had come out, it was absolutely blazing, and I just took my helmet off and lay down at the side of a road on the grass. and and watched all these cyclists go past me. And I think I lay there for about half an hour. I had a little wrap in my little meat and veggie wrap that my wife had made for me, and I just lay there on the grass and fell asleep with this literally in my mouth. It was some other riders like, "Are you all right? You all right?" And I woke up, yeah, I'm fine. And I got myself back on my bike when I felt ready for it. And off we went. Legs completely empty. There was one big climb. I would consider myself a hill climber. There was one big climb in the Outlaw, the final race. One big climb, and it was probably normally for me, maybe it's a 3-minute climb, possibly 500-600 meters in length. Maybe it's about 8%. It took me about 15 minutes to get up. My legs just wouldn't let me get up there. But I didn't feel like there was any pressure. I just ambled up there, 60, 70-year-olds plus, just tootling past me. Wasn't bothered, absolutely bothered. I knew I'd nailed this. But I felt really sleepy and lethargic and quite giggly, quite hypoxic in a way. So we got to the end of the bike, and that took me about 6.5 hours with sleep. And we got out onto the run, and again I went into the change tent and sat down for 15 minutes, chilled out, chatted to people around me. We were all rushing around. Some guy gave me a bacon sandwich, which I thought was lovely. I sat there and ate this bacon sandwich, and then went off onto the run. Getting out into the run and just changing from bike to run legs felt amazing, and my legs were exhausted, and I still had this issue with my the compartment syndrome in my foot. But I started jogging and I felt good, and it's a different feel because the previous 6 there was you and the people that were supporting you on the route, and if they weren't there, you were on your own. But when you get to a stadium at a big event, 2,000 people and as many supporters, it's totally different. People shouting for you, wearing emblazoned on my top all the charity information, so people know who I am, and they're shouting. And that, the psychology of that can lift you, out of a funk or out of what we call a bonk or hitting the wall. It can lift you out of those feelings to a point. And I could feel myself starting to go, have a lovely route around the stadium and then out into the countryside. And when I came back from the countryside for the first time after possibly 17, 18 kilometres, I was just empty. I could feel myself empty. I couldn't lift my arms up. My legs didn't want to move forward. And it's probably the first time in the whole of the 7 Ironmans where I just wanted to cry. I was crying. I couldn't stop crying. I still can't explain that. I was doing a great thing, and I felt that I was going to finish it, but I was emotionally starting to come apart. And I think that's a physical thing. If I wasn't so tired, I probably wouldn't have felt the way that I did. And my wife, my mum, and lots of family were there. Were saying, "Keep going, keep going." There's some of the lads that that from your own team are up the road. If you keep going, you'll catch them. They're not running quite as fast as you. And I was quite ahead of some of the people on my team. And I kind of knew at this point that I was starting to come apart at the seams. I was experiencing feelings that I'd never felt before, like an emotional low, a physical low, but just utter heaviness that I couldn't get myself out of, and I was just falling and falling. And what I know now is it was a glycemic issue, so that it was something to do with my blood sugars. I'd run myself into the ground basically, and by something like 130 miles in, with 10 miles to go, my blood sugars were dropping so low that I was struggling to see. My vision started to go, my speech started to go, and it was up and down, up and down. I could run for a bit and then I'd fall apart, and then I started to get quite serious gastric issues because of the issue with nutrition. And then I saw one of my friends, a very good friend of mine from my same team, TriLife, up ahead, and I caught him up, and I told him I was in a bad way. And this was a good friend of mine's very first Ironman. And I must say that from this point forward, he forewent his own Ironman time to support me. And for what felt like an eternity, I think it was possibly another 3 hours, he babysat me around this course where I was literally standing 1 minute, being sick and retching the next, with no, there's nothing coming up, lying on the floor asleep the next, him dragging me to my feet and telling him, don't let me stop. And this this rigmarole went on for the next 3 hours. Crying 1 minute, high as a kite the next minute, on the floor the next minute, retching the next minute, in agony. I mean, there was a point within the last 2 hours where every single impact on the floor, every time my foot hit the floor, it was sending these, not even like a sharp pain, I can't even explain it, just an utter deep body pain that was like anguish every time my feet hit the floor. And every time I stopped, because I had no energy, my energy would just disappear, and I had to decelerate, and it would literally, I would screech and screech, the pain of slowing down, and I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep running. I promised myself up until the sixth Ironman, I'd only taken short breaks to change my shoes and socks. I'd ran the entire thing. It's something I wanted to be really proud of. So I tried my best to run, but every time I slowed down, I was in excruciating pain, sending just shudders through my body of pain, and I ended up biting through my lips and biting through the inside of my mouth, blood. For weeks after, I had calluses in the inside of my mouth where I bit through the inside of my mouth because of the pain. It's just talking about it now just makes me feel quite cringy and sick. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. It was awful. And this guy, Brian, it just kept me going. I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, and he was force feeding me the right stuff at the right time because he was still thinking. I was making all the mistakes because I was completely falling to bits. And he dragged me around. He dragged me around until possibly 600-700 meters to go. When I said to him, "Look, just if I can give you anything, I want you to finish before me." And he went off and found his family and went down the finish chute. And I stopped and just wept, just absolutely wept. Stood in the dark on my own, and cried and cried and cried, and I just had to stop. And I think people were waiting for me then. And again, I don't know what the tears were. Just utter exhaustion and emotional. I knew I'd done it, and now was my right to be able to run down the finish with my family, my boys. Funny story, they wouldn't let my wife through, bless her. I don't know what it was. I thought whether they thought she was a groupie and they held her back. But bless her, my two little boys got to run down the finishing chute with me. And I was just gone absolutely in bits emotionally, got over the line. And it's amazing how all of that can just lift the second you get over the line. None of those pains were there. The anguish was gone. Utter exuberance and relief. Amazing how the body can do that. How I can be in utter agony, blood in my mouth, bit the inside of my mouth, feet on fire, body just screaming with anguish, and then gone. Absolutely nothing. And I didn't have any pain for the rest of that night. And I woke up the next morning and I got up before everybody and I went off to McDonald's with my boys and I bought everyone in the whole camp McDonald's, and I was high as a kite, felt nothing, no pain, no anything, no residual issues, no blisters, nothing. Weird. So that took us up to the very last one. And I just want to sort of reflect on something that I've said there about one of my strategies as I've been asked to talk about, is a strategy of pulling people in. It's something that I've always done. I think it would be a very selfish man or a very ignorant man to turn around and say that I did this on my own, because I absolutely didn't. I absolutely absorbed everything around me, the love, the respect, the support, the caring, the nurturing of an unbelievable amount of people that literally carried me through that, not least Brian on the last day, who just swept me along and kept me going. And I think that is one of the strategies that I feel I'm blessed with, whether I've found it or whether I've searched it out or whether it's just been given to me, or whether I'm just lucky. It's having these people around me, because if I didn't have these people to race and run and want to inspire, or I didn't have these people to pick me up and believe in me and push me, and I don't think I could possibly have done this. I really don't. I think I would have wavered. I think I would have given up. And I'm blessed with all of them. And I think any one of them alone would possibly have allowed me, just to inspire my children would have been enough. Just to make my wife and my mum proud of me would have been enough. Just to have had this triathlon community that I feel responsible for, and I want them to do well, for me to finish this, to show them what they can achieve, that would have been enough. But I'm I have a lot. I have them all. And I think that this obviously is dedicated to them because of what they've done. But I think that is something I have to actually pay service to. That is one of the strategies of having a network that is worth fighting for. For whatever reasons, but having that network of people to fight for. So I've got one last video to do, and I hope these have been interesting for you. I just want to talk about post 7 Ironmans and some of the things that I possibly would have changed along the way. Again, I'm going to keep thinking about the psychology for you guys, and after this series of videos, I'm more than happy to take any questions if anyone emails me, because there's very obviously some things that I've missed out or aspects of this that you would want to know more about. So I'm more than happy to do that. So I'm going to finish off with the last video in a moment.